Hey guys, it's Amy here, back again with another video. Another year, another reading goal failed. I was this close to reaching my reading goal this year. By the time this video comes out, I would have finished reading 10 books and I'm on track to finishing my 11th book out of the 12 books that I set as my reading goal. To be fair, that was due to many ups and downs regarding things, just 2020 in general. And sometimes the books themselves, some of them I read through really fast, and others it took me a while before I'd actually get going with them. I just let them simmer because I wasn't quite as fond of them. But I read them anyway, because I'm a book reviewer. And in this video, I will be ranking the 10 books that I finished reading this year. If you want to read more details about each book that I've read, then check the link in the description to find my blog where I post reviews on them. But for now, let's rant and summarize my thoughts on all these books. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Number 10, we've got Nowhere Fast by Kevin Waltman. This book had a promising start for a contemporary book in my eyes, with an interesting flawed main character and amazing descriptions. The only flaw was that they finished the story at a god-awful wrong time, and that put the whole thing really far down for me because of how bad it was. It felt nothing like an ending, with an incomplete character art and basically no solutions being solved. I mean, that's life, but I don't read books to read about life. I read books to read about fiction that's typically triumphant and has a point to it. I couldn't find any point to this story at all once I had finished it. Zero substance for the ending because the plot had very little direction. Number 9 is That Burning Summer by Lydia Sison. It was initially a very promising book. Any story that takes place in World War II is to me. But apart from what was in the description of the book, like the blurb, there wasn't really much else to it. When the romance came about, everything else felt predictable and flavorless. I couldn't tell what the objective of the story was meant to be once these two characters got together and started having romantic chemistry. There was no clear goal after that. And that just made for a very downhill slide while reading this book. Number 8 is Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. The main reason I didn't like this book as much as I thought I would was because I wasn't reading it aloud to children. I was just sitting in the bus reading this. These stories are ideal bedtime stories for kids, just not for somebody who's just looking for a way to pass the time on the trips to and from university. Not only that, but some characters in the book are actually quite problematic. For once, I think the movie version is better. Well done, Disney. Number 7 is Wolf Speaker by Tamora Pierce. This book was a sequel to Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce, which was a book that I read and reviewed last year. And you know how they say that you can't beat the original? There was nearly zero evidence of anything original in the book impacting what was happening in book 2. I'm not putting this down because of how anthological it seemed, even though it kinda isn't. But characters who appeared in book 1 ended up turning up at the end of book 2 just for that climactic point and had no importance anywhere else in the book. That makes it quite the put down for me. Number 6 is The Emperor Mage by Tamora Pierce. Book 3 of the series, and it comes one higher than Wolf Speaker in the series too. This one was better for sure. The character involvement and world building was so vivid and intriguing. And there was such good mystery and suspense in there too. Love that stuff. But one thing that didn't work for me was an ending that didn't pay off. It had about 50 cents worth of payoff. And that ending also went against character. Aside from that, it was really enjoyable. Number 5 is Hope and Red by John Scovran. The world in this book was absolutely stellar and vivid. I could almost imagine myself actually being in there. From the magic of the biomancers to the streets of New Laven. The same could not be said for the fight scenes. And it was very much a letdown, especially when the two main characters had fighting experience. Despite all that, the fight scenes were short and basically glossed over. I don't like that. Monks and rogues are melee based. It should have been pivotal to the storytelling, and yet it wasn't. Number 4 is Spirit by Brigid Kemmerer. One of my favorite series to read in late high school was the Elemental series by Brigid Kemmerer. A great urban fantasy teen read, and still stands today with book 3. The language and plot that I read in these books never disappoints, and the characters are very realistic and well-rounded. But what did disappoint in this book was the climax. It was one chapter long and it felt nearly dead. Just felt like ripping a band-aid off. which is not what I wanted. I wanted more. Number 3 is Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods. Much of Rick Riordan's writing in the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series are amazing. And this book was no exception. It had the same stylization that he has in his novels, but telling it through the perspective of actual classical history. It was interesting to see it with the modern lens he put it through to make it easier to digest. The only trouble was that sometimes the modern lens took me a bit out of the picture, and it just made me realize I was reading a book. I know that statement sounds dumb, but like, readers know what I mean. You don't want to read a book and then have a moment where you realize that you're reading a book, unless it was written out that way from the start. I just made that worse. Basically, it broke immersion. Apart from that, riveting stuff. Number 2 is The Savior's Sister by Jenna Moresi. This one I was blessed enough to review an arc of, and I was honored to do this, as The Savior's Champion was the first book that I ever reviewed on my blog. The quality still stands. It provided a fresh perspective on a familiar story that was still very enjoyable. Even the most familiar scenes in there were very welcoming and new. And number 1 is Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. It is so hard to describe how much I love this book. The world was incredibly built and it felt so unique. A fantasy superhuman dystopia. The action scenes were fantastic and the prospect of the main character Dave was top-notch. I had never plowed through a book so quickly in my life. That's how much I loved it. And with that, now we gotta put 2021 in perspective. Let's set some new reading goals. My reading goal for 2020 is to finish 14 books. And I'm aiming to mix it up with some that are fantasy and then some that are not fantasy. The 14 books which I aim to finish reading in 2021 are Firefight by Brandon Sanderson, the sequel to Steelheart. Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Realm of the Gods by Tamora Pierce, the final Wild Magic series book. Secret by Bridget Kemmerer, the 4th book in the Elemental series. The Librarian of Auschwitz by Antonio Iturbe. I hope I pronounced that right. Percy Jackson and the Greek Heroes, the follow-up to Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods. Scythe by Neil Schusterman. Sacrifice by Bridget Kemmerer, the book to finish off the Elemental series. Calamity by Brandon Sanderson, the book to finish off the Reckoner series. The Berlin Girl by Mandy Robotham. City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. I've got a lot on my plate, a lot of series which I am starting and or finishing. It's gonna be a wild ride. If you want to join me, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you're new around here. Ring the bell if you want to hear when I post new videos. You can also check my description to find my Instagram, my Twitter, and my blog, where you can check out more of these reviews. Stay creative, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!